the Federation, Chief of Staff to the President, members of the Federal Executive Council, senior government officials, Mr. President, after it's presented to you, you will sign and thereafter make your remarks. After your remarks, we will have the group photographs. Take the national anthem and we'll be done.
So just you tell them like you said.
Okay. To join Mr. President while he signs are the following people: Honorable Minister of Finance and Honorable Minister of State, National Planning, SGF, and the Chief of Staff to the President. They will be to Mr. President's right. To his left will be Senate President, Speaker House of Reps, and Honorable Minister of State Budget and National Planning.
All this was at the other.
And then all other members of the team, can you please go in below? All the backroom staff of the budget office, go in below so that you'll be captured in the group photo. All staff of the budget office. Okay. With the deed now done, we can return to our seats, and Mr. President will make his remarks. Let's take our seats and to make his remarks.
The Speaker, House of Assembly, members of the National Assembly, honorable ministers, the Secretary to the Government, the Chief of Staff, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to sign into law today the 2023 Appropriation Bill, the eighth and final annual budget of this administration, along with the 2022 Supplementary Appropriation Bill, principally to enable us to respond to the havoc which the recent nationwide floods did to our infrastructure and agricultural sectors. I would like to sincerely thank the Senate President, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, and all the distinguished honorable leaders and members of the National Assembly for the expeditious consideration and passage of the appropriation bill. As I mentioned during the presentation of the 2023 appropriation bill, early passage of the budget proposal is critical to ensure effective delivery of our legacy projects, a smooth transition program, and effective takeoff of the incoming administration. I appreciate the firm commitment of the Ninth National Assembly to the restoration of a predictable January to December fiscal year, as well as the mutual understanding, collaboration, and engagements between officials of the executive and the legislative arms of government. These have made the quick consideration and passage of our fiscal bills possible over the last 4 years. The Finance Bill 2022 includes measures necessary for the effective implementation of the 2023 budget and the attainment of the various set objectives. As you will recall, I laid the 2023 appropriation bill before the joint session of the National Assembly on the 7th of October 2022 and forwarded the 2022 finance bill thereafter. I believe the next administration will sustain the early presentation of the annual appropriation bill to the National Assembly to ensure its passage before the beginning of the fiscal year. I firmly believe the next administration will also sustain the current public financial management reform efforts, further improve the budgeting processes, and particularly maintain the tradition of supporting the appropriation bills with finance bills designed to facilitate their implementation. To sustain and institutionalize the gains of the reforms, we must expedite action and conclude work on the organic budget law for it to become operational before the end of this administration. The 2023 budget that I have the honor of signing into law today provides for aggregate expenditures of 21.83 trillion naira, an increase of 1.32 trillion naira over the initial executive proposal for a total expenditure of 20.51 trillion naira. As is customary, the Honorable Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planner will subsequently provide more details of the approved budget and the supporting 2022 Finance Act. We have examined the changes made by the National Assembly to the 2023 Executive Budget Proposal. The amended fiscal framework for 2023, as approved by the National Assembly, shows additional revenues of 765.79 billion naira and an unfunded deficit of 553.46 billion naira. It is clear that National Assembly and the Executive need to capture some of the proposed additional revenue sources in the fiscal framework. This must be rectified. I have also noted that the National Assembly introduced new projects into the 2023 budget proposal, for which it has appropriated 770.72 billion naira. The National Assembly also increased the provisions made by ministries, departments, and agencies by 58.55 billion naira. Nonetheless, considering the imminent transition process to another democratically elected government, I decided to sign the 2023 appropriation bill into law as passed by the National Assembly to enable its implementation to commence without delay. I have, however, directed the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning to engage with the legislature to revisit some of the changes made to the executive budget proposal, and it is my hope that you will receive cooperation in this regard from the National Assembly. I also urge the National Assembly to reconsider its position on my proposal to scrutinize the federal government's outstanding ways and means balance of the Central Bank of Nigeria. As I stated, the balance has accumulated over several years and represents funding provided by the CBN as lender of last resort to the government to enable it to meet obligations to lenders as well as cover budgetary shortfalls in projected revenues and or borrowing. I have no intention to fetter the right of the National Assembly to interrogate the composition of this balance, which can still be done even after granting the requested approval. Failure to grant the securitization approval would, however, cost the government about 1.8 trillion naira in additional interest in 2023, given the differential between the applicable interest rates, which is currently monetary policy rate plus 3%, and the negotiated interest rate of 9%, and a 40-year repayment period on the scrutinized debt of the ways and means. To ensure more effective implementation of the 2022 capital budget, we proposed and the National Assembly approved an extension of its validity date to 31st March 2023. I would like to appreciate the cooperation of the National Assembly on this. The Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning will work toward early release of the 2023 capital vote to enable ministries, departments, and agencies to commence the implementation of their capital projects early in support of our efforts to deliver key projects and public services, as well as improve the living conditions of our people. As I mentioned during the presentation of the 2023 appropriation bill, the budget was developed to promote fiscal sustainability, macroeconomic stability, and ensure smooth transition to the incoming administration. The budget was also designed to promote social inclusion, strengthen the resilience of the economy. Adequate provisions have been made in the 2023 budget for the successful conduct of the forthcoming general elections and the transition program. To achieve the laudable objectives of the 2023 budget, we must achieve our revenue targets. MDAs and government-owned enterprises must intensify their revenue mobilization efforts, including ensuring that all taxable organizations and individuals pay taxes due. Relevant agencies must sustain current efforts towards the realization of our crude oil production and export targets. To augment available fiscal resources, MDAs are to accelerate the implementation of public-private partnership initiatives, especially those designed to fast-track the phase of infrastructural development. This being a deficit budget, the associated borrowing plan will be forwarded to the National Assembly shortly. I count on the cooperation of the National Assembly for a speedy consideration and approval of the plan. Regrettably, the review of the Finance Bill 2022 as passed by the National Assembly is yet to be finalized. This is because some of the changes made by the National Assembly need to be reviewed by the relevant agencies of government. I urge that this should be done speedily to enable me to assent into law. I thank the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planner, the Minister of State, Budget and National Planner, the Budget Office of the Federation, the Senior Special Assistants to the President, Senate, and House of Representatives, the Office of the Chief of Staff, and everyone else who worked tirelessly and sacrificed so much towards producing the 2023 Appropriation Act, and I am signing today. These are challenging times worldwide. Let me conclude by expressing my deep appreciation to Almighty God for His grace and commend the continued resilience, understanding, and sacrifice of our people in the face of current economic challenges. As this administration draws to a close, we will accelerate the implementation of critical measures aimed at further improving the Nigerian business environment, enhancing the welfare of our people, and ensuring the welfare of our people and ensuring sustainable economic growth over the medium to long term. I thank you, distinguished honorable members, most sincerely for your attention. May God continue to bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Mr. President, shall we now rise to take the national? 1, 2, 3. Fatherland, with love and strength and faith, the labor of our heroes past shall never be in vain. To serve with heart and mind, one nation bound with freedom, peace and unity.
Well, there you have it. 2023 budget finally signed by the President Muhammadu Buhari, and this is, of course, the last that will be signed by his administration, the 8th in the series. Notably, have been consistent in the last 4 years, taking off first calendar year, and this year is not an exception. Prof, 4 straight years of uninterrupted
Oh, yes.
budget takeoff, first working day of the year. What does this imply?
Yes, I think for me, that's a major legacy that the president will be leaving behind. That of being able to repair, as it were, the hitherto broken budget cycle. At least now you're sure of having the budget, being implemented, from January to December. So the January-December fiscal year, which now is in alignment with the budget year, for me is a major achievement, a major legacy that the president, will be leaving behind. There's no gainsaying the challenges that come with late implementation of or late passage of the budget and late presentation. The entire process, whether it's preparation, whether it's presentation, implementation, and because when it is not presented in time, you heard him saying it, he has been doing it in October. So when you don't do it in time, it affects the time for consideration, and of course, when it gets assented to much late, it affects implementation. So the Minister of Finance is not able to release approved release of especially the capital the component. So I think it's a good thing that we are now having a predictable budget year, January to December, which is also why he said that he hopes that should be sustained. But alongside that are the other budget reforms that we're also seeing, one of which is ensuring that the budget of government-owned enterprises, their estimates of revenue and spending are also integrated, in the national budget. Another reform we have seen is the idea of also accompanying the appropriation bills with the finance bills. So that's also another reform that I also think, should be, sustained. But that is not to say that, more reforms are not needed. I think more reforms are needed in the budget process, particularly in the type of budgeting system that we are adopting. Okay, I want to see us move more towards the zero-based budgeting system as opposed to the traditional budgeting system where you have something in this year, for example, because you had it last year. So you have an item in the budget this year because the item also featured in the previous year without a justification for having it, in the current year.
Just like the Constitution amendment that has just returned again.
Yes, item. We need a zero-based budgeting system where before you check the service-wide votes, under recurrent, you have contingency 30 billion. That was what we had last year. This year, we're also having 30 billion. Now, the question is, what is the basis for having 30 billion last year, 30 billion this year? For over years, we keep having 30 billion. So, I think we need reforms in that area. I also think we need to improve more on monitoring and, oversight. I would say we have recorded appreciable improvement in terms of transparency, in terms of participatory approach to budgeting. The open budget and partnership talks about 3 things: transparency, participation, and oversight. We have improved substantially with respect to transparency and the participatory approach to budgeting, but I need to see more. We need to do more in the area of oversight, monitoring, evaluation, which partly explains why we don't have this budget monitoring, implementation reports, out, in good time. We need to have them out in good time, in line with what we have in the fiscal Responsibility Act. So we have made some improvements, but we still need to do more. And that's also why what the president said about having a budget law is very, important. We need a budget law. He was saying he hopes the National Assembly concludes that before he leaves. We need a budget law to bring clarity to some of these issues. For example, does the National Assembly have the power to increase, or should the National Assembly have powers to introduce new items?
Yes, I was going to actually come to that, because the budget, the president laid them on the 7th of October, and he had some concerns. Increases 1.32 trillion naira increase, and of course there's the new project insertion 770.72 billion, an increase in MDA's budget by 58.55 billion. There's a whole long list he read out there, and then one will begin to wonder that this administration will practically come to an end in 5 months.
Exactly.
So who takes responsibility for these changes?
Yes, that's why.
And how do we ensure that it works?
Exactly. You're right. These are very pertinent questions. As I said earlier on, we need a budget law that will clarify these things. The Fiscal Responsibility Act, allows the National Assembly the power to make amends in whatever the president submits. Okay, but what it didn't say is whether that amendment, is to the effect that they can increase the size of the envelope. For example, the president is submitting initially what he submitted was 21.5 trillion before the supplementary, the appropriation bill came. He submitted 20.5. Now, within that envelope, okay, should the National Assembly have the power to increase it or to just make adjustments within that envelope? These are issues that we need to sort out in a budget law. And you also mentioned it. This is a transition budget. The major challenge I see with this budget, the major challenge is the fact that another administration is coming in by July, and of course that administration will have the responsibility to take it to the end of the year. And remember, the major assumption of this budget is that oil subsidy will go by the end of June. Okay, now that's why they have not provided. If you look at the first scenario they did, they had oil subsidy was to go up 6.7 trillion in 2023, but they used then you can be sure the deficit will
mount.
Yes, it will grow. Borrowing will grow, and that will rubbish most of the things. The other assumptions, inflation rate 17.16, of course, will be a lot higher. It will affect GDP growth. May not be realistic if some of these assumptions don't come to pass. For example, if fuel subsidy still stays there. So for me, that's a major risk that this budget will face. The fact that, number one, we are going to have a break, another person is going to take over, and number two, the fact that it has been predicated on the fuel subsidy being removed by June. So if it doesn't happen, and remember too, the president talked about.
I wanted you to talk about the ways and means, because there's been a whole lot of discussion around it. I mean, we cannot securitize the borrowings. What does it import for the performance of the economy and the budget this year?
The president made 1.8 trillion in October, with new borrowing, okay, and debt service of 6.3 trillion. Now, out of that debt service of 6.3 trillion, 1.2 trillion was meant for to service debt owed the central bank. Now, if you securitize, you kind of relieve them of the burden, because you're spreading it over 40 years, and the rate of interest is at 9%. Okay, as opposed to paying 16.5%, the monetary policy rate. So rate of interest at 9% is lower, and you're spreading over a long period of time. So it's a relief on the part of the government. But if that is not done, what it means is that the government will now spend 1.8 trillion to service the debt
Where would that come from, considering
Exactly.
the tight scenario we have
Exactly.
of
So
revenue crunch?
the size is huge, 23 trillion. I know it's over a period of time, even though we know that in the last couple of years, the thing has really as lender of last resort. So the amount grew, no doubt. And that is why, there is need now to find a way to spread that last resort. Is not expected to lend to the government more than 5% of its actual revenue in the previous year. Okay, it hasn't happened over time, and so the money has accumulated. So what the government is saying now is that allow us to spread it. Of course, central bank will be the one securitized at an interest rate of 9%. So that needs the approval of the National Assembly. And when the National Assembly withholds or does not approve, it has a lot of grave consequences. National Assembly to
so it has got to be not just the ways and means. We have some commitments also with the World Bank, the IMF, and some other institutions. How do you see the finance bill that is already increasing taxes? Will it boost revenue?
Federal government tax net, that's important. There's no doubt tax revenue to GDP is a fiscal deficit, but in doing that again, we have to be careful, such that we don't raise taxes to a point where we begin to hurt businesses. Okay, and then when businesses get affected, their profits shrink. Okay, you end up not getting the taxes that you originally set out to get. So we really have to be careful to balance that. I am in support of trying to widen the tax net, ensuring that, just as the president said, everybody that is meant to pay tax, pays tax. MDAs, government enterprises should ensure that people who are supposed to pay tax, pay these taxes. The idea of also cost to revenue ratio is important. At 50%, MDAs, revenue generating agencies, should not spend more than 50% of their revenue. But, well, of course, it's also part of what is there in the Strategic Revenue Growth Initiative and even in the finance bill. I understand the finance bill is amending some laws, of course, as usual. The capital gains tax, is amended. The company's income tax is also amended, including the act that set up the Federal Inland Revenue Service, where we have now been told that what part of that provision is also to separate the
office and the board.
office of the chief executive from that of the chairman. So the chairman will now be called the Commissioner General. Okay, so what for me, that's just administrative. But what is important is to ensure that, as I said, people who are supposed to pay tax, are made to pay tax. And I also think we have a lot of potentials. I'm sure the Finance Act is also talking about, has emphasized that in this area of the digital economy. Okay, the dust, that has been being raised by the issue of stamp duty, is yet to settle. So that gives you an idea that there's a lot of money, in that digital space, and it's for the government again to ensure that whatever is collected is actually taken to the government coffer. I am sure, given the size of this economy, given the population and the size and the taxable persons in the economy, whether individuals or companies, okay, if we ramp up our collection efficiency in this country, we shouldn't be talking about borrowing.
Yes, because I'm also an advocate of paying all bills electronic. You still go to the parks, you go to some places, and you will have to physically pay this cash, and then it tells on transparency.
Person to cash, and person to the government, and government to person. If you reduce the cash element, okay, you have a way of boosting your revenue. And we have some subnationals that have are doing well. Okay. Yes, and we also tried the service today is because of the ones they've introduced already, the Tax Pro Max.
Yeah,
you remember. So I think that has also gone a long way to boost the revenues that are collecting, whether a company's income tax, whether VAT and the rest of it. As I said, in terms of collection efficiency, we still have a long way to go, and And I think that the agencies responsible should really work on that, whether it is customs, whether it is Federal Inland Revenue Service, and in particular, NNPC. Yes, because yes, while we focus on non-oil revenue, it's also important to recognize that oil revenue is important. We need oil revenue to be able to develop
The non-oil.
yes, the non-oil sector. Okay, and I'm happy the president has said that they're making efforts to check the issue of oil theft. And the good news, of course, is that oil production levels have begun to increase, which is why in the 2023 budget, the benchmark they have used is 1.69 million barrels per day. 2020 it was 1.6. This year 1.69 million barrels per day. It's still below the OPEC quota, but
do you see us getting to that
including
level this year?
condensates. Yes, I think it's realistic. If what we have been told, what we have read concerning efforts being made to tackle oil theft, if there are any guide, I think we can hit that 1.69 million barrels per day. And on the side of crude oil price, if you check the projections by the Energy Information Administration, is projecting $95 per barrel for 2023, because it expects that the OPEC plus output cut will be there, the G7 price cap, the ban on
In Russia.
on Russia's oil. So all of this on the supply side will help price. And even the International Energy Agency is also saying that it expects to see growth in consumption of crude oil coming more from India and China in 2023. So all these give hope that oil price will stay at least above $75 per barrel we have used as benchmark for 2023. But in all, I think emphasis should continue to be on non-oil. But the point I'm making is that we still need the oil's revenue, which is why it's important that that oil subsidy needs to go. Fuel subsidy needs to go. And for it to go by June, this is the time for the government to begin discussion, engage the stakeholders, agree with labor. What are the compensation schemes, that must be put in place to minimize the impact on the masses by the time it is removed? Because of, you can make no mistake about that, it will shut when you remove fuel subsidy. It will have some negative, some impact on the economy. So how do we minimize the impact? This is the time to begin the discussion. Not in
Yes,
June.
in fact, I was going to come to that. That perhaps from your view, when we say to open discussions, there's a whole lot, Prof. Not just on the oil side now. Yes, when the oil revenue comes in, it's good news to some people, but for us here, it is not good news because we're not refining.
Oh yes,
we're still importing finished products.
yes, it's
right?
unfortunate.
So when we say subsidy goes, it will really have to take a whole lot to convince people that the money, they're not going to feel it. Prices are increasing. Wages are static. That is also a whole lot of discussion that has to be done. Then we have the changes in the budget. In the budget, of course, the president made mention of that. So there's a whole lot of discussion that we need to be having as a country. There's the discussion also that we need to have about the monetary policies, which is having different people take different sides to all this. And these all are happening at the same time. How expedient is it for Nigeria to ensure that these discussions end January?
Of course, the discussions won't end in January. We can also add to that the currency redesign.
Yes.
Withdrawal limit and all of that. That's why the truth of the matter is that 2023 is going to be a VUCA year. VUCA is VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, year. There's no doubt about that. When I said it's important that the government begins the discussion now, if you plan to remove fuel subsidy by June, and a new government comes in, for example, I don't see all of them, all the candidates are saying they will remove fuel subsidy. I don't see them doing that as soon as they get into office.
Yes,
It will take some
they will
time.
need to stabilize.
Yes, they want to stabilize. It will take some time. That's why I said it's important that the work starts now. Telling, getting people convinced. National Orientation Agency, letting people know why this thing has to go. That the subsidy is actually benefiting the rich and not the poor. And that if we remove this subsidy, the money we are going to save will be used to better the lot of the poor person. That message has to go out there. Okay, look at health sector, for example. If you look at this budget, the big spenders, one is defense. Defense is 1.25 trillion. Okay, now out of that 1.25 trillion, 1.1 trillion is for personnel. Personnel. You see, when I look at that figure and I hear candidates, presidential candidates saying when they get into office they will engage more security people, security personnel, police. They will increase the number. I mean, where will the money come from? How will you fund them? Already, I've told you 1.1 trillion is for personnel costs, that's salaries and wages of the military, defense. So that's already huge. So if you look at defense, if you look at education, recurrent, okay, the capital component is not much. In health, for example, if we want to remove subsidy, can't we first of all see how we can increase the coverage of the health insurance scheme beyond just the civil servants? Today, the cost of assessing Medicare is very expensive, and the national health insurance coverage is less than 5% of the population. So as much as possible, government should be thinking of reducing our out-of-pocket expenses. The minimum wage is 30,000 naira. With inflation rates where where it is, exchange rate, and so on, the only thing Labour will hear will be these measures. If you're saying you don't have money to increase minimum wage, what will make sense will be how you now want to reduce out-of-pocket expenses. In healthcare, I've given an example, the health insurance. Some people can go to hospital and get treated, particularly primary healthcare. Okay, in education, there should be from primary to secondary should be free. Secondary up to SSN.
If I may come in there, Prof.
Yeah.
The primary healthcare, the primary education, these are
concurrent
issues that, whether we like it or not, they are basically for the subnationals, but somehow have become the responsibility of the national.
Yes.
So it means to some experts they will say we are giving too much responsibility to the center and forgetting that the subnationals also have roles to play.
You see, that also comes to the brings one to the issue of this idea of restructuring. Okay, when we restructure properly, and when we tweak the constitution properly, and then devolve these powers, you push those things to the subnationals. They wouldn't be appearing under the concurrent list. So let the subnationals, take care of those things. And the truth of the matter is that subnationals are even in a better position to handle those ones because they're closer to the people. Yes, they're closer to the grassroots. That is, for me, that's what this restructuring is all about. And it also extends to the issue of security. Security, let the subnationals too also be more directly involved in it.
Okay.
State police, for example. Okay. Yeah. So I am saying that even in this budgeting, we have been focusing on that of the federal government. But if you notice, many of these, all of a sudden, for many of them, I have seen their budget for 2023, particularly the capital components, jumped.
Okay.
Leah, why do you think it jumped in 2023?
Because they are aligning.
Election year. So it jumped for many of them. They're using that as a way to provide for election financing. So campaign financing, campaign funds. That's what I see happening. It's not as though those are really
all that.
That's the the subnationals too. It's
This
an
question,
issue.
I have just one opportunity to ask you one question, and I'll make it very brief. Citizen participation. How crucial is it to see that the budget and all these policies work this 2023?
Well, I alluded to it, improve on that, particularly on the issue of
Implementation.
monitoring. We need to involve non-state actors, okay, in monitoring projects, okay. We need to empower or strengthen the supreme audit institution in this country. I was talking about the Office of the Auditor General, to perform its functions. What have we seen in recent times? The Auditor General's report is out, and it's never implemented, even though we also get them in arrears. But of course, the Auditor General reports to the National Assembly,
Yes.
through the Public Accounts Committee. So he presents the report, but the thing never gets implemented.
Just doesn't get any.
Yeah, so that's
there's-
why I said that yes, we have made some improvements in terms of budget reforms, but we still need to do more in terms of monitoring and evaluation.
Thank
Very
you,
critical.
Professor Uche Owaleke. I've been speaking with Professor Uche Owaleke from Nasarawa State University in this unusually extended business express that took us all the way to the presidential villa for the signing of the budget. We must thank you for your insights and inputs, and we end the show here, and normal programming will continue. Have a blessed day. God bless Nigeria.
NTA Tuesday Live, analytical, in-depth, educative, and interactive on national issues, accommodating all sides of opinions.
We as a people have understood that we have to fight corruption before it fights us back.
Poverty has